On Bet You Didn't Know, compliments of Sigismund Consultants, Inc.
Drink Pepsi Black for max taste, no sugar. Pepsi Black time, 18 hours.
The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio Newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
The news comes to you compliments of KFC. It's finger licking good. With the news, I am Ruth Wilson. Good evening. First, the highlights. The COVID curfew has been lifted from today. Guyana's daily oil production is set to pass 300,000 barrels. In the region, a St. Martin businessman who is a former parliamentarian has been jailed for financial crimes. And internationally, the United States has warned that Russia has the troops in place to invade Ukraine at any time, and American citizens should leave within the next 48 hours. And the Canadian province of Ontario has declared a state of emergency amid a surge of protesters. Details of these and other stories in a moment.
KFC will be holding an employment call Sunday, 13 February 2022 from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the parking lot at the Vaccination Road branch. Get interviewed on the spot. You'll need a job application, a vaccination card that shows you're fully vaccinated, ID, TIN, police clearance, 2 references, passport-size photograph, and your birth certificate. KFC's employment call, Sunday, February 13th, 2022, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the parking lot at KFC's Vaccination Road branch.
And now for the news in detail. As expected, the COVID-19 curfew was lifted Friday by the National Task Force less than 1 day after President Irfanali indicated that would have been done. The National COVID Task Force says this decision takes immediate effect, while authorities say that swimming pools will be allowed to operate with 50% capacity. Swimmers must be fully vaccinated. According to the director of the COVID-19 task force, Colonel Nazrul Hussain, Guyanese are being advised to take all necessary steps to avoid contracting the virus that has so far claimed more than 1,000 lives since March 2020. Notwithstanding these relaxations of the measures, the National COVID-19 task force is urging all Guyanese to demonstrate responsible behavior and extend best wishes for the upcoming Mashramani celebrations. President Ali on Thursday, in an address to the launch of the Guyana Explorer publication, said the country could not continue being under a curfew for much longer. Exxonmobil today said it started production at Guyana's second offshore oil development on the Stabroek Block, Liza Phase 2. The company says this brings total production capacity to more than 340,000 barrels per day in only 7 years since the country's first discovery. Production at the Liza Unity floating, production, storage and offloading FPSO vessel is expected to reach its target of 220,000 barrels of oil later this year as operations continue to be brought safely online. It adds to the more than 120,000 barrels per day of capacity at the Liza Destiny FPSO, which began production in December 2019 and is now delivering at better than design capacity. The Stabroek Block's recoverable resource base is currently estimated at more than 10 billion oil equivalent barrels. The current resource has the potential to support up to 10 projects. ExxonMobil anticipates that 4 FPSOs with a capacity of more than 800,000 barrels per day will be in operation on the Stabroek Block by year-end of 2025. Payara, the third project in the Stabroek Block, is expected to produce approximately 220,000 barrels of oil per day using the Prosperity FPSO vessel, which is currently under construction. The field development plan and application for environmental authorization for the Yellowtail project, the fourth project in the block, have been submitted for government and regulatory approval. The Ministry of Health says that 80% of Guyana's population has been vaccinated. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony praises health sector workers and all those who have supplied vaccines.
We're one of the countries in the Caribbean that would have vaccinated a substantial portion of its population. Over the last year, we would have been able to administer 850,735 doses of vaccines, which works out to be about 2,330 vaccines per day that we have administered. So I think that's a really good record that we have set, and I want to express my sincere thanks to the health workers and everyone who's been involved in the vaccination program. I would also like to express our gratitude to the various donor organizations.
This disclosure comes as the COVID task force has announced that the more than 2-year-long curfew has been lifted with immediate effect. The health ministry says the death toll now stands at 1,190. Of the 84 persons that have been hospitalized, 15 are receiving intensive care because they are very sick. The number of persons still in home isolation on doctor's orders is now 1,937. A new well drilled at Noikadakt on the island of Wakanam in Region 3 has been activated. The Guyana Water Incorporated says this means that residents in areas such as Sanssouci, Belly Plain, Noikadakt, and Good Success receiving a level of service that has more than doubled. Chief Executive Officer of Guyana Water Incorporated, Sheikh Baksh, and a technical team recently visited the island to assess the performance of the new well, which was found to have a high production. Visits were also made to several of the areas which are benefiting from the new well, and some residents were receiving such a high level of service that they were able to do away with the need to pump water into their water tanks. However, other residents are not yet benefiting from the new well. In this regard, an action program is being implemented to improve the efficiency of the distribution network. These include extensive leak repairs, installation of air valves, piloting for all existing valves on the island, and service connection upgrades. Given the significant improvement in the water pressure, GWI's team is closely monitoring the distribution system for leaks. In addition, customers in areas which are receiving a good supply of water will have meters installed to reduce water losses. A water treatment plant currently being designed will be constructed on the island aback the Noikadakt well station in order to reduce iron content, thereby providing a better quality of water. The new Wakanam well will be commissioned in a month's time. You're still with us on News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. It is 18 hours 8. We now turn to news in the region. St. Martin businessman and former Member of Parliament Silvio Matser has been convicted and sentenced to 22 months imprisonment for tax crimes. The Daily Herald St. Martin reported that he also had a conditional sentence of 18 months for a previous case converted into prison time. The conversion was based on Matser being found guilty of money laundering and tax-related crimes during his probation in the previous case. Matser and his now defunct company Energizer NV were irrevocably convicted of tax evasion by the High Court of the Netherlands on January 7, 2020. The Supreme Court sentenced Matser to 21 months and 2 weeks in prison, 18 of which were suspended on 3 years probation. Energizer was also ordered to pay a fine of $1.9 million. Antigua's immigration laws are expected to be amended in order to waive the payment of fees necessary to regularize the status of illegal immigrants who may be poor or destitute. The government will also shortly approach the parliament to grant amnesty to deserving residents whose immigration status is doubtful, an idea that was proposed by Prime Minister Gaston Brown last year. Antigua Observer reports that Chief of Staff in the Office of the Prime Minister, Lionel Max Hurst, says steps will also be taken to beef up the immigration department so they can see everyone between March 1 and April 21. In 2015, Antigua and Barbuda passed the Immigration and Passport Amendment Act 2015, under which illegal immigrants could seek amnesty to have their time in the country extended. The Citizenship Act requires that a person seeking citizenship to be an ordinarily resident in Antigua and Barbuda for no less than 7 years, of which not less than 5 years in total must have been spent in the country. In considering whether an application for amnesty should be granted, the Cabinet would look at whether the applicant has any criminal convictions, their family ties in the country where applicable, and any other information it deems relevant to the application. In Brazil, at least 8 people were killed on Friday during a dawn police raid in Rio de Janeiro's Vila Cruzeiro favela. Police say the operation targeted a major drug dealer. According to the police, Chico Bento is part of Rio's largest criminal organization and was reportedly hiding in Vila Cruzeiro, having fled there from Jacarezinho, a favela occupied by police earlier this year. Authorities vowed a renewed effort to bring security and public services to the city's violent slums. Police say the 8 people killed were members of the narco-trafficking gang. They added that members of a gang focused on cargo theft were also targeted in Friday's raid. The police said they seized a large number of rifles, grenades, and drugs. Shots fired during the operation left Vila Cruzeiro's residents unable to leave their homes. Nearby healthcare facilities and schools were shut down during the shootout. The deaths will add to criticism from human rights groups who accuse Rio's police of using excessive force and killing too often. The vast majority of police victims are young black men. The operation comes a week after Brazil's Supreme Court ruled that Rio de Janeiro's state government must come up with a plan in no more than 90 days to reduce the death toll related to police raids in the state, especially in poor areas. Military operations on Venezuela's border with Colombia have killed at least 9 people belonging to illegal armed groups. Venezuelan Defense Minister Vladimir Pedrino said on Friday that 8 civilians died after explosive devices left by the same groups detonated. Pedrino added during a press conference that at least 13 members of the armed group, which come from Colombia, have been detained. He did not give details about the civilian victims, but confirmed they were Venezuelan. Pedrino's statement was the first official report regarding military operations in Venezuela's Apure state this year, which sits on the border with Colombia. Non-governmental organizations have raised the alarm over bloody clashes and targeted killings by Colombian leftist guerrillas, the National Liberation Army, ELN, and FARC dissidents. The military action also destroyed 16 camps belonging to the armed groups and seized 1,200 kilos of cocaine and 800 kilos of marijuana, Pedrino said, adding that the groups are fighting for control of routes for exporting drugs via Venezuela. At 18:14, we now turn to international news from the BBC.
I'm Stuart McIntosh with the BBC News. Hello. The White House says Russia has got the troops in place to attack Ukraine at any time and urges all US citizens to leave the country within the next 48 hours. The National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, added the administration didn't know if the final decision had been made yet, but added that the Kremlin was looking for a pretext to justify an invasion. Barbara Plett-Usher has the details.
This warning that Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, put forth was more urgent, I think, and more specific. He said that the Americans believed that Russia could take military action against Ukraine as early as within the next week. Up until now, their assessments had kind of been, well, he may be waiting, Mr. Putin may be waiting until the end of the Olympics, which is the 20th of February. Now they're saying that it could happen any time, and they feel strongly enough about it for President Biden to have had a call with his closest allies, NATO, European, Canadian allies, British allies as well, talking about the dangers.
President Biden has signed an order to split the $7 billion in frozen Afghan government assets held in the United States since the Taliban seized the country last August. Half will be used to settle compensation claims against the Taliban filed by American victims of terrorism. The rest of the money will go to humanitarian relief. The UN Secretary-General's spokesman, Stefan Dujarric, said the announcement was welcome but needed to go further.
We've called for many times the release of Afghanistan's frozen assets, and I think we're encouraged by the step taken today in this regard. But I think it's also important to reiterate that humanitarian assistance alone will be insufficient to meet the tremendous needs of Afghan women and men and children over the long term, and it's critical that the Afghan economy is able to restart.
The Canadian province of Ontario has declared a state of emergency over the protests disrupting trade with the United States. Truck drivers, who demanded an end to all COVID restrictions, have been blocking 3 border crossings and bringing large parts of the capital, Ottawa, to a standstill. At a news briefing, the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, urged protesters to leave. He said the authorities were considering all options to safely end the blockade.
Everything is on the table because this unlawful activity has to end, and it will end. Of course, I can't say too much more now as to exactly when or how this ends because, unfortunately, we are concerned about violence. So we're taking every precaution to keep people safe. But the absolute safest way for this to end is for everyone to return to your communities now.
You're listening to the latest world news. It's coming to you from the BBC. A Brazilian drug lord who controls one of Rio de Janeiro's most violent shantytowns has managed to slip through a security dragnet for the second time in a month, escaping after a fierce gun battle with the police. Military police launched a major operation in Via Cruzeiro in the early hours of Friday, hoping to arrest the man known as Chico Bento, who'd sought refuge there. At least 8 people died as armed gang members and police exchanged heavy fire. The head of the World Health Organization says the acute phase of the COVID-19 pandemic could end this year if global vaccination rates hit 70% by mid-year. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said it wasn't a matter of chance but a matter of choice. He was speaking on a trip to Africa, where 11% of the population is vaccinated. Russia has defended the participation of the teenage figure skater Kamila Valieva in the Winter Olympics, despite a positive dope test in December. The Kremlin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, said she had Russia's absolute support.
The
Kremlin is just urging everybody to wait. Our sports officials are doing their job. We're convinced at the moment that this is a misunderstanding. As you heard today, our sports officials have some questions with the timelines of testing Valieva's samples.
The 15-year-old helped Russia win Monday's team figure skating event, but the gold medal wasn't awarded. Officials are trying to stop her competing in further events. Russian athletes can't compete under their national flag because of state-sponsored doping. Saudi authorities say they've intercepted attempts to smuggle nearly 2.5 million amphetamine pills into the kingdom. The drugs were found in 2 separate shipments, arriving at the Red Sea ports of Jeddah, Islamic and Duba. In the first, 2 million tablets were discovered hidden in boxes of plastic gloves. BBC News.
And that's the news to the moment.
KFC will be holding an employment call Sunday 13 February 2022 from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the parking lot at the Vaccination Road branch. Get interviewed on the spot. You'll need a job application, a vaccination card that shows you're fully vaccinated, ID, TIN, police clearance, 2 references, passport-size photograph and your birth certificate. KFC's Employment Call, Sunday, February 13th, 2022, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the parking lot at KFC's Vaccination Road branch.
To end the news, here's a recap of the highlights. The COVID curfew has been lifted from today. Guyana's daily oil production is set to pass 300,000 barrels. In the region, a St. Martin businessman who is a former parliamentarian has been jailed for financial crimes. And internationally, the United States has warned that Russia has the troops in place to invade Ukraine at any time, and American citizens should leave within the next 48 hours. And the Canadian province of Ontario has declared a state of emergency amid a surge of protesters. The news came to you compliments of KFC. It's finger-licking good.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.